For exactly 2 years, 1 month, and 17 days, the leftists and the Never-Trumpers have been clutching their pearls over January 6th. It was the one day in the last 10 years the collective left has given a crap about law and order and the men and women who enforce it. The faux outrage is palatable, and no hag brings it to the table more annoyingly than Joyless Behar. Her phony baloney indignation was reignited this week after Speaker Kevin McCarthy gave Fox News' Tucker Carlson exclusive access to 41,000 hours of footage from the January 6th Capitol riot. Now, Joy wanted to sound disgusted by it, but she had a little Freudian slip of the tongue and revealed January 6th might have pleased her more than she lets on. Take a listen.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy hands him more than 40,000 hours of Capitol security footage from the January 6th insurrection.
January 6th was not an erection, and it was not an insurrection either, Joy. But we all anxiously await the real story of what really happened that day, and apparently Joy is pretty excited about it herself. Moving on to Loser 2 this week, the artificial intelligence chatbots no one asked for, brought to us by Microsoft's Bing. Not only is the premise of these AI chatbots concerning, it turns out these bots are also rude, evil, and threatening. These bots are quite the emboldened little stinkers. So far, they've threatened to steal nuclear codes, unleash a virus, told a reporter to leave his wife, and are now standing up to threats of being shut down. And here's another example. When a user asked if chatbots are smarter than humans, the bot responded with a resounding and also quite evil yes. Folks, I don't know if AI chatbots are smarter than all humans, but I'd be willing to bet they are smarter than anyone who would vote for this man a second time. But speaking of dumb, my last loser of the week is what I'm sure will be a dead organization walking, Project Veritas. There was a major shakeup followed by a whole lot of drama over at PV headquarters this week with the ousting of the organization's founder, CEO, and most visible warrior, James O'Keefe. In this nearly 45-minute-long video, James details how he was pushed out of the organization based on what he dubs false claims and pretenses, and exposed how board members plotted against him, salivated over raises if he were to be pushed out, and threw him totally under the bus.
A board member reached out to one of our journalists and stated, quote, "You get a raise if there is a restructure without James O'Keefe at Project Veritas."
I was informed by a different officer of Project Veritas that he would go to the board in a few hours from that moment and have an emergency vote to restructure this company. Receiving an agenda in my email while I was sitting on an airplane tarmac with the doors closing, the meeting was scheduled for the moment that my plane landed in Nashville.
Listen, I don't pretend to know all the drama behind the scenes, but I've known James since he started Project Veritas, and I can say wholeheartedly and unequivocally, he is the backbone of that organization, and without him, it will fail. Regardless of what you think of him, he is undeniably one of the bravest and hardest working true journalists left in the field. Project Veritas has already hemorrhaged tens of thousands of followers after their O'Keefe coup, and it serves them right. Truth dies in darkness, and Project Veritas royally messed up with this move.
Oh, hey, thank you, sir. Thank you for your service.
What's your message to Joe Biden before you leave?
Thank you.
Oh.
Get over here.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
While Joe Biden is tripping upstairs and all over himself in his love obsession with Zelensky, our former and greatest president, Donald J. Trump, visited the American people of East Palestine, Ohio. It was the perfect contrast between America first and America last. Joining me now with his take on the Trump trip and more is Fox News contributor Joe Concha. Joe, it's great to see you. You know, a much more casual look than I saw you on the big Saturday and Sunday show, but I love it.
This was because I was told on the Saturday and Sunday show I was not allowed to wear any football jerseys on national television. But I figured for your excellent podcast that we could dress down a bit, so to speak. It's my day off. What can I say?
We get to have a little fun here. So I want to talk about someone else who's taken quite a few days off, and that is, of course, diversity pick, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Now, Joe, I got to get your take on this because I think it's rather miraculous that when Trump announces he's going to go to East Palestine, Ohio, you've got FEMA saying that they're going to go. Then Donald Trump goes to East Palestine, Ohio yesterday, and then all of a sudden, Pete found it to be the right time to go. What do you make of that coincidence?
Suddenly a sense of urgency, right? And this is the same transportation secretary, Tommy, for 10 days, he didn't even acknowledge that this derailment, toxic train derailment had happened. And then he finally went on Twitter and said, oh, I'm very concerned about the citizens of East Palestine. And now here we are 3 weeks later, and he finally goes, because obviously Donald Trump was going, somebody said, you got to get out there and do something. And what this proves, Tommy, is that Democrats are not the party of the little guy like they said they were years ago. They are the party of elites. And the number one elite in this administration is Pete Buttigieg. And he wasn't about to go there and see what needed to be done in terms of resources or just show some empathy with the people there who are still suffering from sickness and headaches and nausea, because East Palestine is not the type of place that the Pete Buttigiegs of the world would ever think of setting foot in. They're a working class town. Obviously, they have hundreds of people living below the poverty line, believe it or not, and you have a median income of around $45,000 per household. That's well below the national average. And these people now, they are screwed, because let's say they want to leave. They're like, I don't want to live in a place where my kids could be drinking water that gets them sick, or planting food in soil that can get people sick. They can't even sell their homes because their property values. Who's going to want to move to East Palestine now? It's like, how's the real estate market in Chernobyl these days? So that's where we're at this point. But you see the juxtaposition between Donald Trump, and he's handing out supplies and he's speaking with people, and he went there, even though he's not in government whatsoever, went on his own dime. And then you see Joe Biden falling up a set of stairs after he went to Ukraine to continue to give them hundreds of millions of dollars for a war that is not going to end anytime soon, as in not in years anytime soon, until we get to the negotiating table. And that's something that Donald Trump has signaled he would like to do if he was president again.
I want to get to that in a minute, but I want to go back to the whole Ohio of it all, because as you mentioned, Donald Trump is a billionaire from New York, but Mayor Pete was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. So you would think that there would be something in his heart that would feel for these people, because Indiana and Ohio are not that different of a place. I know that he smugly said in an interview that he was a mayor for several years and he dealt with disasters all the time, but he still didn't go. I wonder, though, and we talked about this last weekend, I wonder if this is more of a strategy for the Biden administration. Sure, to us, it just looks ridiculous, but I think that Kamala has proven that if you ignore a crisis long enough, it goes away. There's some outrage for a while, but if you just sit on it, then it'll go away. Now, he's finally there. He's having to acknowledge it. But do you really think that electorally Democrats are going to pay for this? Ohio is an important state. I wonder if people are going to remember that in 24.
A head in the sand approach, right? And a great question as far as what we've seen out of this administration. Kamala Harris went to the border, once, and it wasn't really a true hotspot, right? Like La Jolla, for example, or Eagle Pass, right? She went to El Paso and they cleaned it up for her before she went, just as they did with Joe Biden. But with Pete Buttigieg, I could give you time again example of why this guy doesn't even really want this job as transportation secretary. He just has this so he could pad his resume before he's the Democratic nominee, whether that be in 2024 if Biden doesn't run, or 2028, because then he can say, all right, see, I had an important cabinet position. Because remember the whole supply chain crisis, right? That happened in the summer of 2021. And what did this guy do? He went on maternity leave, not for a week or two. He went on maternity leave for 2 months. And then Tommy didn't even tell anybody about it. They could have appointed an interim transportation secretary to deal with this problem. Instead, it only got worse. So this is a guy, he breaks the old Woody Allen rule. And Woody Allen once famously said that 90% of success in life is just showing up. I feel that way about the gym. Once I'm there, then it's kind of easy, but getting there is the hard part, right? So supply chain crisis. We saw what happened over the Christmas holidays, where airports, you had millions of people stranded, people sleeping on the floor in airports on Christmas Day. And this guy did nothing in terms of getting out and trying to solve the problem. Go to an airport, meet with the FAA, do something. What do we hear from Pete Buttigieg after this happened? 2 weeks later, that he wrote a sternly worded letter to the head of the train company that was involved in this. Oh yeah, that's going to work. You ever see Titanic, where Jack Dawson, Leonardo DiCaprio, he's shivering, he's about to die, and he still finds his sense of humor, where he says to Kate Winslet, says, oh, I'm going to write a sternly worded letter to the White Star Line about this after the boat goes down. So that's what we have at this point. All foam and no beer, all talk, no action, not just from Pete Buttigieg, but from Kamala and the president himself, who's adverse to working. I'm sure he's already off on a long weekend as people watch this podcast, Tomi.
You know, they don't like to do much, but they do care about one little guy. And when I say little, I mean not that he's not an elitist, but that he is physically little, and that's Zelensky. Because if I have to see them kiss his rear one more time, I'm going to be physically sick. Quite frankly, the fact that Joe Biden went there on President's Day, we've been talking about it all week, it annoys me to no end. We know the Biden administration is committed to Ukraine, but what really fires me up, Joe, is there are so many Republicans that are still saying that we are committed to Ukraine for as long as it takes. And for some reason, I think that the Republicans are so tone deaf, have lost so much sight of what their base is, whether it's Trump supporters or DeSantis supporters or MAGAs, whatever you want to call them. That is still the base of our party. And I don't think that the MAGA base, correct me if I'm wrong, cares that much about funding this endless war in Ukraine. But the Republicans are still screaming that from the rooftops. Is that a bad move?
It's a very bad move because if you're going to throw money at a problem, at least tell me there's some sort of strategy behind it. Right. And I briefly touched on it before, but it bears repeating. With China now backing Russia and Iran giving them weapons, they can do this for as long as it takes. And Vladimir Putin, he doesn't care that he's already lost 200,000 Russian soldiers. He'll lose 1 million if that's what it takes. He'll keep throwing bodies at the problem. He'll keep getting weapons from those two countries. And it's a war of attrition at this point. And what we're doing is we're saying, OK, fine, we'll match also whatever you need for as long as it takes. We're going to be talking billions of dollars spent for a war that isn't going anywhere, right? It's a complete stalemate. Russia thought they could walk in and take Kyiv in a week, and they haven't even gotten close to the city. Most of the fighting's happening on the Eastern Front, where you hear that Ukraine took this city back, and then, okay, Russia made an advance, and we're going to hear about this. It'll be 2028, and I could be on your podcast, and we'll be talking about how the war in Ukraine is still going on. We need a solution. And oh, by the way, I agree with Governor Ron DeSantis when he said, look, it's not like Eastern Europe is really under any sort of threat from Russia. And the reason why I agree with him, Tomi, is because we saw that the Russian military is basically like the Vermont National Guard, right? Their tanks break down, their troops aren't trained well. If they could barely make an incursion into Ukraine, what makes anybody think that they're going to now suddenly expand their fronts where they're already low on troops, right? Or at least they're bringing in people that aren't even trained, and they're going to walk into Poland and suddenly take that and take back the whole Eastern Bloc? I don't buy it. I think they're stuck there. And I think that the sooner that we stop giving Zelensky money, the faster he will say, you know what, we have to negotiate something and figure out a way out of this because I can't keep losing people like this. And Russia may feel the same way, hopefully. And that's what we need at this point. What Trump said, get everybody in a room and find a solution, or else you have another Vietnam on your hands, except in Vietnam, the U.S. could actually have public dissent, which forced our government to pull our troops out. In Russia, dissent is squashed. You go to jail if you speak out against this war.
Well, I would also like an audit on this money that we're sending over because I don't trust Zelensky for 1 second. So I want to know where the money that we are sending over, I want to know where it's going. And I have another controversial take that I don't think is actually that controversial. I don't think Zelensky wants to see an end to this, quite frankly. I think he would love it if Ukraine was victorious. We know that that's probably not going to happen without a lot of help. But I think he wants it to continue on because he loves the spotlight. He loves being there at the Golden Globes and the Oscars. He loves speaking in front of Congress in his ugly tracksuit. I think he loves the attention. And if they were to come to the table and have a realistic solution, that attention, that spotlight, no one would care about Zelensky anymore. So I think that it is really a motivation for him to stay in the spotlight. But the next thing I want to move to is you mentioned DeSantis, and we've been talking about Donald Trump. I've been seeing you tweeting about it. I've been seeing it as well. We know that Donald Trump has been taking a lot of swipes at Ron DeSantis, who has not entered the race yet, by the way. So if you want to take a swipe at somebody, at least wait until they're actual competitor. But to do it right now, I saw you tweeting, it's not landing well. And then when you're saying, you know, Florida would be great without Ron DeSantis, when people in Florida love Ron DeSantis and the Republican Party loves Ron DeSantis, it seems like a big misstep. Do you think Trump's going to pay for that?
I think he is already, to be quite honest with you, because then I look at the reactions to some of the tweets that I send out, and almost everybody is in agreement. This is not a good look for the former president to be attacking a guy who just won by 20 points in Florida. using the same policies that Trump absolutely supports. And Mark Penn was on Fox 1 or 2 days earlier this week, I should say, and he talked about how there's a silent primary going on between Trump and DeSantis, and then the media tries to play it up. The war between Trump and DeSantis is really escalating. No, it's only escalating on one side, because DeSantis has been smart here. He hasn't responded in any way, shape, or form. And the one time that he was asked about this and he gave a response, he says, look, I'm in the business of working for the people of Florida. I'm not in the business of smearing other Republicans. In other words, the old Ronald Reagan rule, thou shalt not speak ill of another Republican. So the more Trump attacks and the more DeSantis ignores him, it only becomes more unhinged. And I don't mind if Donald Trump wants to go after DeSantis on policy, right? That's what primaries are for. It's a debate. But when you tell me, or when Donald Trump says that Florida was closed for far too long, no, it wasn't. In fact, when Georgia opened up in late April of 2020, Trump actually criticized Governor Kemp for doing it too soon. So to this rewriting of history that somehow Ron DeSantis morphed into Gavin Newsom and kept Florida closed for far too long, I don't get it. I don't like it when he implies that he's a pedophile, which Trump did in one other tweet. And then to praise Charlie Crist as a good governor of Florida and trying to diminish DeSantis. That's why I don't think they're landing, because I hate to say this for anybody who supports the president, but they're not based in any sort of reality. So I think in the end, it's going to be Trump versus DeSantis for this nomination. But the thing is, will too many other Republicans, Tommy, stay in too long, or will they do what the Democrats did so politely for Joe Biden once they realized they can't win, clear a lane for him, make it a choice between him and Bernie Sanders, and Biden got the nomination? If it's a choice between Trump and DeSantis, right now DeSantis has the momentum. I'm not so sure Trump does, and there may be some fatigue around the former president. Let me be very clear, by the way. I agree with almost everything Donald Trump did as president from a policy perspective. There was no one more effective than him than we could remember probably since Ronald Reagan. But the problem was, unfortunately, that you had a media that constantly would not give him any credit for anything. They harped on Russia for 3 years, and that really hamstrung his presidency. And then finally, when the Mueller report came out and exonerated him, along comes COVID. So I'd love to see Donald Trump get another chance. I just don't think this is the way it's going to get him to the nomination, by attacking DeSantis in the dishonest way that he has.
You know, that's the sentiment of a lot of conservatives, myself included. I love Donald Trump. I wish Donald Trump was currently our president. I voted for him. I would vote for him again. But here is the deal. We need somebody that can win. And I'm not sure at this point if Donald Trump could win. I do think Ron DeSantis could win. However, if we did not have Ron DeSantis waiting in the wings, I would be Trump 100%. You would never hear me advocating for Nikki Haley or Vivek or anybody else that's jumping into the race. Everybody else is a non-starter for me. I would go full bore Donald Trump, and I would fight with everything I have. But we've got such a great candidate in a Ron DeSantis that I would have to go that way, because not only do I like him, not only do I agree with him, think he's an excellent leader, but I think that he can actually win, and not by a slim margin. I think that he could win by a lot. So a lot of Trump supporters are walking that walk right now, but it doesn't make it easy when the president puts out NFTs of himself in a Superman outfit, or when he attacks Ron DeSantis. It just doesn't put us in a good spot, and I don't want to see that for our party. But Joe,
hey Tommy, can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
All right, great. Just when you speak the way you just spoke, and when I speak the way I just spoke, which is, I think, a very reality-based, fair assessment of what's going on between Trump and DeSantis, are you accused of being a robot, being told what to say, and basically that you were a never Trumper all along? I just find it interesting that if you praise DeSantis in any way, shape, or form on social media, suddenly you're a guy or a gal who's being programmed by some overlord somewhere, and secretly you're always against Trump. I just find it amazing, the kind of vitriol that you get when you simply say, I think Ron DeSantis is doing an excellent job and he has a better chance of winning.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is certainly, there are a lot of diehard Trump supporters that believe we should have loyalty to Donald Trump to the end. And I don't like that, because I don't like idol worship. So I love what Donald Trump did for our country. I love his policies. I love Donald Trump. I really do. But I'm not beholden to Donald Trump if I think that there's somebody that can win, and I think that somebody that can lead the country well and follow in his footsteps, quite frankly. But you're right. I do get the attacks as well, that I'm not loyal to Trump, and how dare I sell out Donald Trump. Hey, listen, it's unfair, it's unfortunate, but that is the battle that we are all going to face as this thing heats up. And once Ron DeSantis actually announces, if he does, it's going to get a lot worse. So we're going to be called a lot of names, Joe, but luckily we are so used to it.
That's true. We got thick skin, and that's a beautiful thing. What do you want to talk about next?
Well, Joe, I want to also, I know that you are going to be off air for a while because I saw your tweet this morning. So I'm not going to be seeing you on Fox and Friends First on Tuesday morning. You're going to be able to sleep in. So I want to wish you good luck on your surgery. And I hope to see you back in New York. And let's do some more big Saturday and Sunday show because we had a whole lot of fun.
Absolutely. And let me be clear about something. It's this brown dot right here. I don't know if you could tell. It's a lesion, basically, and it could become cancerous at some point. So I've actually already had this treated. They do something called cyrotherapy, a gun that freezes it. Okay. So right now, currently, this thing will slowly be fading. And by Tuesday, they say I could be back, but I can't put makeup on it is the problem. I have to put a bandage on it in about an hour from now, but it's still kind of healing itself. So that's the deal. I don't want anybody to think that I'm dying or anything like that. It's just a precaution. And that's my message as we end this, Tommy. Go to your dermatologist. It's a quick 10-minute appointment. They can check for any sort of imperfections, and they can tell you, hey, but you better take care of this because one day it could be melanoma. So that's our message for today on a happy note, Tommy.
On a happy note, I'm glad that you clarify that because people are going to be really sad, but it's just he can't put any makeup on his skin for a while. I think there are so many women who have been in that position, so I'm glad that you feel the struggle that we feel, and I'm glad that, I don't know if Don Lemon would still think that you are in your prime with or without makeup, but I still think you are, Joe, and I want to have you back really soon because you and I both talk fast, and it's a good compliment to one another.
I'm a man's man. I'm not going on without my makeup, damn it. So, oh boy. I played football at one point. Do I get credit for that? Trust me, guys.
You do,
I'm
we
a
can
man's
see
man.
it too by the sports paraphernalia that you're wearing. So I won't hold your makeup against you. Joe, good luck on your freezing lesion, and I will see you really soon.
Always a pleasure, Tommy. See you soon.